Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Maracle. Me, reading books and making videos. Little synopsis of what's in the books. A book review. This is number 82. Unbelievable. The last one I did was 81, which was this book, Blue Blood, True Blood, Stuart Swervelow. We talked about some crazy stuff. There's a couple things we didn't talk about in his book. Alien groups. Look at this. Little pictures. That guy looks like something on Star Trek there. So I might do another. These look like Aleister Crowley, the evilest man alive, Hiowas, and also the creatures, the gray aliens in Whitley's book, and many other people who were abducted. So kind of crazy information in Stuart Swervelow's book. I think I made one video. I probably need to hit this book again at some future date. Then I did the Philadelphia Experiment, number 80. Alexander Bruce, edited by Peter Moon, where apparently they put microwave transmitters all around the ship, so that the enemy's radar during World War II, 1943, couldn't see the ship, but they got an unexpected surprise. The ship disappeared, and when it reappeared, some of the crew members were half in and half out of the bulkhead, and so much more. Go watch my video I did on that. Invisible Horizons, number 79, I did. And throughout history, people have been spotting UFOs on land and in the sea. And another one I did, number 78, The Philadelphia Experiment and Other UFO Conspiracies with Brad Steger, Alfred Bielek, and Sherry Hansen Steiger. And I think the Steigers also wrote the book Psychic to the Stars, to the movie stars in Hollywood. They were involved in psychic readings and stuff. Number 77, the Montauk Project. Oh my gosh. Abducting people all over Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, young boys, and doing some horrendous experimenting with them. Lots of them died. Piles of bones. Underground cavities at the end of Long Island. Just crazy. Mind control is what they were doing. They were experimenting with it, and apparently some kind of time tunnels pushing these young kids through there. Philadelphia Experiment by William Moore, Charles Berlitz. More information on the ship that you see on the bottom of this book here that apparently disappeared. More documentation, more investigation. Another one on Montauk Revisited, Preston Nichols, Peter Moon. That base at the end of Long Island and all the craziness going on. Delta T antennas with transmitters, apparently to open portals into other dimensions. You think it's crazy? And go look up CERN in Geneva. The goddess of destruction, Shiva, out front, 666 in a logo. And apparently they're opening up ports to other dimensions. And apparently in the Bible it says at the end times they'll open up the gates to Hades, the portal to another dimension. Then we had number 74, the Black Sun, and the Nazi connection and the Illuminati and everything else to Project Montauk and the Illuminati occult and everything. And then we did, to start off this little marathon after number 72, which is the series I'm doing on the Gospel of St. Mark so far, part 1, and the Gospel of St. Matthew, part 2. This is 73, Transylvania Sunrise. And apparently over there in Romania, inside a mountain, they found this facility with a force field protecting it. High-tech. Thousands of years old, beyond anything we can do today. And apparently the Bilderberger groups, the Illuminati, forced their hand on the Romanians to take, participate or take control of the investigation and discovery in the Busiji Mountains of the alien base for giants. See what it says here? So look into this stuff. And the reason why this is applicable to my series Freemasonry and Satanism, I think this far in my investigation, it's clear that there are forces controlling the world. People call them the Freemasons, Zionists, the Jesuits, the Vatican, the banksters, Rosicrucian, Mystery School of Babylon. If you want to learn more about that, go look up Bill Cooper, his series of videos, Mystery School of Babylon. William Cooper. He spent a good portion of his life exposing that before they killed him. So my point is, whether it's Kennedy's assassination, and here's a document, was JFK killed because of Roswell? So between Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, a lot of these people back then, Prescott, Bush, were aware of the goings-on in the UFO arena after or towards the last part of World War II, and other activities before that. And apparently Hitler was incommunicado interdimensionally. He was into the occult for sure, sending spies to the Tibet mountains, the Himalayas, Shambhala, and other places all over the world, including the Middle East, looking for secret, sacred, or secret artifacts to obtain power. And even right now in Israel, they're trying to rebuild the King Solomon's temple. And their flag has the three-pointed star. And apparently King Solomon, way back when, on the first temple, had a magic ring with a six-pointed star that he could call forth the demons from interdimensional worlds, the netherworld, wherever. And that's how he got his power. So there seems to be this goal of power for these people who are trying to bring us a new age and a new world order. And apparently part of that aim is to destroy Christianity, as in the many books I've gone over. And every time I do these videos on UFO aliens, I like to go online to one of the websites. And I think the last one I did was in 2015. And there were a bunch of sightings back then that I read on one of my sites. 3 spheres appeared in Tampa. A bright light was not moving. With binoculars, I saw the light was changing shape, Santa Ana. Red dot-like lights in no order, Bel Air. Possible space fight, Vancouver. All I can say, mind blown, like wow, unbelievable, got it all on tape. Kansas City. So you can go look up MUFON yourself and look at the last 20 sightings. These were some I found when I made a video back then. Every time I do a UFO video, I go and see what the current sightings are. Which, by the way, I did that for today. UFO sightings for 2016. So, apparently, a man in Spokane Valley in Washington claimed to have witnessed and recorded a glowing sphere on video. The object apparently stopped to hover and seemed to drop something. January 26, 2014. Here's one on 2016. No, that was 2000... well, the write-up says 2014, but apparently the report was made on 2016. Unless the guy actually just typed the date in wrong. Another one here, a UFO caused terror among family members. A flying saucer reportedly appeared as the family stopped to take a picture of some motorbikes on a bridge. And the family posted photos of the sighting. So here's a picture of what they took a picture of. Huge UFO orbits an asteroid close to Earth. UFO enthusiasts have observed disc-shaped object orbiting an asteroid very close to Earth, igniting speculation of NASA's covering up an alien spaceship. NASA said it was nothing but a small moon. A small moon? Where? That people can see? Nevertheless, this doesn't stop UFO enthusiasts to accuse the space agency of not telling the truth. So what do we have here? A small moon near the moon? A huge UFO orbits an asteroid. Alright, we got another one here. Interesting UFO activity over Air Force Base in Homestead, Florida. Here's one new footage of a bright, unidentified flying object flying across the sky in Homestead, Florida. Witnesses report swirls of light in the sky on the early morning close to Air Force leaving my home. Alright, another one here. Triangle UFO caught on tape over Dulce, New Mexico. Dulce is supposed to have a UFO base there. Alien base, underground or military base. 8 February 2016. Here's an interesting one. A halo is an optical phenomenon produced by light interacting with ice crystals suspended in the atmosphere. UFO during halo phenomenon. Daytime UFO sighting filmed from a plane over New Mexico. somebody filmed this one here. So I've noticed there's more than two types, but two in particular. They have these orb types that are actually bright lights, like a moving balloon that you could see through. But it seems to be under some kind of intelligent control. It'll fly or pace a plane or take off or play with the plane even. And then, of course, the metallic types. And they come in several different varieties. So here we got UFO over Texas, San Antonio. The paranormal event on the 26th of January 2016. What I recorded was a large unidentified craft being escorted by a jet. Escorted by a jet. Unknown lights over Smyrna, Tennessee. So unknown light recorded by a jet. Regular reports anytime you want to. You can go on MUFON or one of these other sites and get current details. And was JFK killed because of Roswell? Remember, he's the one who said we're going to the moon. And I got to read this whole document. I haven't read it yet. So the book I'm going to do today, Morris K. J. Jessup on the bottom here. And here he is. I've talked about this book. So I thought maybe I would dig a little deeper into it and try to have a conversation. An intelligent conversation about what's out there. How long have these reports been documented in human history? And this series is Freemasonry and Satanism. Hiowas in Aleister Crowley's book looks like a gray alien, the evilest man alive, whose commandment is, do as thou wilt. And the second commandment is referred to number 1, do as thou wilt. That should be the whole of the law. And he was into decadent, perverted sex with children and adults, and even group sex in satanic, even Illuminati rituals. And he was even involved with the JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and NASA, and so many other books. Is documented in all these books. Something's up. And like I said, Freemasonry and Satanism, the Freemasons are people who are, with all the other occult lodges and temples and Zionists, the people who are running our government, the senators, representatives, banksters, elitists, belong to all these groups, like the Bohemian Grove, where Alex Jones snuck in there and did a video of something called the cremation of care. Under a giant owl, they throw a baby, while the men are dressed in long robes, screeching and howling like something right out of a Frankenstein movie or a Halloween haunted house, and shipping in gay men for sex. So my point is, the people who are running our world are aware of all these goings-on and are keeping it from the public. And it appears to me to be part of the New Age material. Whether you talk about the Palladians or the Theosophist Society, yoga, meditation, ascension, this is all tied together in my opinion. It's been on planet Earth forever. Ties in with some of the things I read about on the Gospel of St. Mark and the Gospel of St. Matthew, and some of the things about Jesus when he took a couple disciples to the top of the mountain and a cloud appeared. And out of the cloud it said, "This is my son, whom I am proud. Listen to him." And there appeared Moses and Elias with Jesus, and the disciples were sort of freaked out. And more and more of activities like this. To me, it's all tied together. What is our reality? So this book might help explain some thoughts, or at least have a conversation about it. Some things to ponder. I do realize that this eclectic group of books I've gone over. Everything from psychic research, remote viewing, Illuminati, Satanism, Freemasons, psychic research societies, UFOs, and so much more. But if you contemplate the whole thing and put it into context, it might seem that the reptilians, there you go, snake in the Garden of Eden, it's a reptile. The Kabbalah, Gene Roddenberry, creator of Star Trek, going into meditative states to get the material for this series, and a lot of reptilian characters in those series. And the fact that the UFO whole topic became popular right after World War II and the nuclear explosions. So one has to say or think that it seems to all tie in together. Is it all a fraud? Are we stuck on this planet and under a gigantic dome, as they believed in the ancient times? And if you look up the Rosicrucian material, you'll see the big dome and some guy crawling through it to get to the other side. And they even had one on Lost in Space, the movie, had that kind of theme. So it just makes, me wonder, we are spiritual beings in these biological bodies. And is it all a manifestation that can only hold together under the dome? And in space, might we not be able to survive? Are there other planets, other star systems with more advanced civilizations out there? And what are they like? And wouldn't it be embarrassing if they were watching us and seeing some of the things we've done here on Earth? Mass murdering people. Seriously obsessed, apparently, with sex. Drugs, alcohol. Abusing each other. Nuking other countries. Planned World War III, where the entire planet gets nuked and everybody gets killed. And the debauchery and slaughter going on for hundreds of years, thousands of years. It's almost as if planet Earth is an insane asylum. Just my thinking out loud. So why don't I get to this book? And let's just talk about it. Apparently what happened here, I said it before, Mr. Morris K. Jessup, on the bottom here, this guy wrote a book on UFOs, not unlike the many I have many books on UFOs. And apparently some three creatures or beings or whomever got a hold of one of his books and marked it all up and sent it to the Department of Navy with a manila envelope, a large envelope, with the words on it, Happy Easter. Well, apparently it piqued the Navy's interest because they got a hold of Morris K. Jessup with a copy of his book, The Case for UFOs, with all the marked up notes on it. And when Morris K. Jessup looked at it, he said, well, wait a minute, that looks familiar. I've been getting a couple letters from this guy named Allende. Hence the Allende letters here. And he says the writing looks similar. So you got the marked up book and the Allende letters talking about Morris K. Jessup's book. And apparently it piqued the Navy's interest. and they had a printing company make many copies of the marked up edition and the letters, and sent it around to a lot of high officials and scientists in the government back then. Getting involved in the UFO book of the century. I'm only reading my highlighted portions. You can go online and find this material. Jessup not only pushed the ET hypothesis, extraterrestrials, for an origin of UFOs, but seemed convinced that there were elements of both good and bad to be found in the behavioral patterns of the occupants of these stellar craft. So he said elements of good and bad. It's important. Apparently he was of the opinion that the UFOs had been with us for a long time. And as he later wrote a book entitled UFOs in the Bible, and was keenly aware of the possible connection between the saucer mystery and archaeological evidence pointing to the fact that the space gods had mingled well with ancient humankind. You see what I'm saying? Why all those books I did prior to this one, in this little marathon since series number 73 to this one here. What number is this? So this is going to be number 82, part 1. Of course, what Jessup had become best known for is his connection with a special annotated edition of his case for the UFO book. The notes contain references to time travel and the Philadelphia experiment. That's where they had the transmitters on that ship and it disappeared. And there is a full-length movie, the Philadelphia experiment, on YouTube anybody can watch. And those other characters, Preston Nichols and Al Beback and Stuart Swervelow and Peter Moon. You gotta get all these things in my memory. That you can look up and go watch these people talk on different talk shows and alternate websites and interviews. A wealth of information for those who are curious to what the heck is going on our planet. Why are they trying to bring about a new world order and get rid of the middle class, have, I guess, apparently, a slave class who have to be microchipped as per the Bible, and an elite class who will rule over everybody and live in opulence, like the Kissingers and Bushes and Rockefeller and Rothschilds and all these Zionist Jewish folks who think that they are the aristocrats of the planet. And the rest of us are all dumb animals. No other way to put it. It's what they say. The notes contain references to time travel and the Philadelphia experiment, where a huge megaton warship had been made to vanish and its crew thrown into another dimension, some of whom got caught between this world and the next, having solidified with the hull of the battleship in a horrific twisting of man and metal. This book is a reprint of the annotated version of the case for the UFO, which has been dubbed the Vero edition because of his notes for this outside group who could possibly be extraterrestrials according to one theory. So I guess the big question is, would the Illuminati, Jesuits, Vatican, Zionist, and all the other elitists in the world, are they incommunicado with some kind of other beings or interdimensional beings? And are those beings the evil beings mentioned in the Bible, reptilian beings, demons, and other things that appear to be able to manifest in our reality? And here's an interesting story. If you look up this stuff on YouTube and watch videos, I'm sure you'll hear it. But apparently this one family went camping, and they were hiking on the trail, and they came to this ledge overlooking the valley below. And they saw down there a group of people, and as they paid attention, it appeared they were doing a witchcraft ritual. And in the midst of the witches appeared, out of nowhere, thin air, a huge, giant reptilian being. Pop, there he is. And the being looked up towards the ledge and saw the campers, the people. And they saw that he was looking at them and pointing. And all the witches turned around. This is not too long ago. And so it kind of horrified the people on top of the campers. So they started to flee. And within a second, because this was quite a distance away where this reptilian creature appeared. But within a second, this creature appeared right there in their midst. He had just transported himself right there. And of course, they were stopped. They couldn't flee. They were caught. And apparently he looked at them and glared at them and told them to say nothing and let them go. So true or not, it appears to be a basis documented throughout history. We're all aware of witchcraft. Witches were burned at the stake. Magicians that were assisting kings and queens around the world. China and India are completely, their history is full of UFOs and these kinds of beings. The Arabs and Muslim have something called the jinn, like a genie. And of course in America and the rest of the Western European world, we had many cases of possession, demonic possession by people. And so much more, which I feel there's not two realities, there's just one reality. So all these things that I have conversations about in these books I read, it's all interconnected. And it just makes one wonder if we are under this gigantic canopy of a force field. It keeps the oxygen here, and some kind of holographic thing that produces a sun that crosses every day, and a moon and stars and all that, all for us, so that we think of that it's a different world when it's not. And I say this because if you look up the Rosicrucian material or history, where they thought there was a flat Earth, and if you sailed too far, you go over the edge. It seems to me, and I hate to say it, but I had a thought. So apparently, in space, let's call it a plateau. Think of it as a giant tooth. Anyways, it's this flat surface with a big trunk on it like a tooth, sitting in space. And on that gigantic plateau is a dome. It's the thought here. And all around the dome, and all over the whole dome, is ice. So if this dome is Earth, the E I put in there, and all around Earth is ice. And according to a theory I might have here, there are 54 of these domes. You're not going to hear this anyplace else. On this plateau. 54 of those domes. And underneath the domes, look at my little dots. All those squiggly lines are ice. Anything outside the dome is frozen. 54 domes sitting on a plateau with a big trunk below it, as per the pictures in the Rosicrucian material. And the dome, as we saw in the Lost in Space movie, or again in the Rosicrucian material, they have a dome. And apparently, according to some thinking I've been doing, there's 54 of them, of these domes on this gigantic plateau. And according to my research, the plateau is 66 times the diameter of Earth from one end of this plateau. And on its surface, 66 the diameter of the Earth. So it's a big, somewhat of a gigantic circle. And in the center of the dome is the North Pole, where there's a gigantic hole in the Earth, and out of it comes a force field, and all around the perimeter is the South Pole, and anything outside the dome is ice. If you've been paying attention to the hollow Earth theory or the flat Earth theory, think about this, and it gets even stranger. Apparently, these 54 domes, I'm connecting these circles here, I've connected the circles. Apparently, the 54 domes on this plateau of this gigantic rock, if you want to call it that, with a root-like shape, looks like a gigantic tooth. But apparently, underneath the domes are vast underground highways that elite people can travel from dome to dome. Just a crazy thing I wanted to add as a plausible explanation to the bizarre goings-on. My point being, also, is that the spaceships and UFOs and entities in these 54 different domes, there could be a dome with a whole civilization that's just black people. Another one Asian. Another one Indian. Etc. Mayans. And maybe this Earth dome on this gigantic plateau in space, not a bunch of planets circling around a star, hurtling at thousands of miles through space, but it's a stationary, gigantic, tooth-shaped thing with a flat surface, with 54 domes on it, underground cities. And Earth is a combination of peoples from many of the different domed, created humanities, including areas for spiritual beings. Not everybody is material like we are in the human form. My point also being, it might be impossible for literal leaving the plateau dome area and going off into space, because as we know, there are many resonant factors like the Schumann wave and other things on planet Earth we need to survive. The human body may not be able to survive outside the dome. Maybe you can go down into the tunnel and go to another dome. And maybe the elites know this. Maybe InfoWars is right. Maybe it is a prison planet. Let's call it a prison dome. See if you can visualize it. Maybe somebody out there is an artist and can paint what I just described. A gigantic plateau with 54 domes on it, and we think we're living on a planet. How crazy is that? Just a lot of little bizarre thinking on my part. Moving back to this book. Preface by Gary Barker. Each page was run through a small office duplicator twice, once with black ink for the regular text of the book, then again for red ink, and a latter reproducing the mysterious annotations of three men, who may have been gypsies, hoaxers, or space people living among men, or maybe living in one of these other domed areas on this gigantic plateau. And they do have ships that they can fly over the vast ice fields to another dome. And the way my theory is, the engine that keeps the force field in place is what we all know is the Aurora Borealis, the strange lights at the North Pole. Well, that would be the emitter of the force field. Like in that Busiji Mountain has its own force field, thousands of years old, and the tables and chairs and equipment inside that ancient laboratory with holographic computers. You push buttons and you can see history, according to that book I went over, Transylvania Sunrise. So the force field comes out of the North Pole. There's a gigantic hole going into the Earth. And it comes out like a big umbrella, 360 degrees. And it keeps this interior warm. It's like your thermostat for regulating the heat in your house. So anywhere outside the perimeter, it's frozen. And apparently in the center of this thing where the hole is, it's frozen. Crazy thinking, right? Thought I could write a whole fiction book about that little sci-fi theory. Why did a government contractor go to so much trouble to reprint a book that had been rejected by the scientific community, and further to induce mysterious letters to the author, even more bizarre annotations? Government interest in some of the weirdest aspects of flying saucer study. So if you've been watching my videos, you know I've gone over a few books on these things. I mean, think about it. Eric von Donovich on my book review, The Gold of the Gods, those gigantic caverns down there in Ecuador, to the top of the Andes Mountains. Inside's cut out, obviously, with lasers. The walls are all glass inside. You could park a Boeing 727 in there. And they have a highway, sort of, all the way down to the coast. They go under the ocean and come up on an island. Apparently were built before the Great Flood to save some of the people. As per the description of the Hopi Indians, people building underground facilities so some of them could survive. So apparently all over the world before the Great Flood, groups of natives everywhere, peoples, were put in a place where they could be saved. Whoever did all that caused the Great Flood if they did that. And if we do have a gigantic dome over us with a gigantic engine in the center that keeps everything warm, it'd be rather simple for them to turn the thermostat down or turn it up and melt some of the ice around the 360 perimeter and flood the whole Earth. Whatever. All right, moving on. Crazy thinking, right? I do have an imagination, but there's a little bit more to it. I remember looking at some photos in the Rosicrucian material, and I'm thinking strongly, who are these UFO aliens in the two types? The solid metal-looking ones, and the ones that look like glowing orbs, almost like a ghost. And speaking of ghost, even with Jesus dying, giving up the ghost in the Bible, even in the Gospel of St. Matthew, he talks about Hades and Satan, and removing unclean spirits and demons from people. So the Allende letters were some letters sent to Morris Jessup about his book, saying, you're crazy, you shouldn't be telling people to look into Einstein's theory of relativity, that caused the Philadelphia ship to disappear and reappear with people half in and half out of the bulkhead. So it just makes one wonder, with this dome theory of mine, in CERN in Geneva, turning it on and looking into it and seeing images of other beings, saying they're trying to open up a portal to another dimension. What is reality? I think that's the question. And what do the people running our government, with all their Jade Helm goings on, drones, beast computer, Snowden saying we're all being spied on, Obama issuing executive orders for more gun controls, the government buying 450 hollow point bullets, and plotting for the EU, and so much more, one has to ask themselves, what the heck is going on? Which is the theme behind all my research in the first place. So anyways, Mr. Allende sent a letter to Mr. Jessup, the researcher, astronomer, scientist, by the way. And the letters claimed that as a result of the strange experiment at sea utilizing principles of Einstein's unified field theory, a destroyer and all its crew became invisible during October 1943. The field was effective in an oblate spherical shape. And I consider myself a bit of a scientist. When I'm reading this, I get the tidbits of scientific information I'm looking for. So anyways, the notes had a tone of absolute weirdness. Sometimes they agreed with Jessup's original text. Sometimes they contradicted it, as they referred to two types of people living in space. Here we go. They specified two habits for the space people. Underseas, and we've gone over books about undersea spaceships and aliens, and what they termed as stasis neutral, the latter term apparently in agreement with Jessup's exposition on points of neutral gravity in space. They mentioned the building of undersea cities and identified two groups of spacemen as the LMs and the SMs. I've been trying to figure out what LM means and SM. The LMs were designated as peaceful, the SMs as sinister. That last little paragraph on the bottom. Wait till I get into the Theosophist Society and all the other New Age occultic stuff. Alice Bailey and other psychic goings-on with the pagan religion, many gods theory. Apparently also in part of the gay agenda, the sustainability, biodiversity, Agenda 21, then a new version, Agenda 2030, and if you divide 20 by 30, you get 666. It appears to me that whoever does control, if it is a domed containment area, as per historic research, thousands of years old, apparently these alien beings, according to the research, came to this planet, that's what they call it. But remember, they didn't know it was a planet back then. Everybody thought the Earth was flat. And they created, according to the story, human beings to mine the minerals on the planet for them. So is this New World Order all about confiscating all the resources of the planet? And again, getting rid of the middle class and having a slave worker class who should be thankful for something to eat and a place to sleep, like an animal, with these elitist beings that we'll be discussing in these books here, owning everything and controlling everything. What does that have to do with Kennedy's death, the Oklahoma City building bombing, 9/11, World War I, World War II, revolutions all over the world, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution, and so much more? Are these people the same, still on this planet, running things behind the scenes? And apparently, according to my research recently, the Illuminati types, the banksters, Skull and Bones, the people who graduate from Yale and Harvard, and other elitists all over the world, apparently their children go to school to be educated on a much more sophisticated philosophical level than they do the rest of us, i.e. the dumbing down of America. Apparently they're doing it all over the world. And the schools that they set up now are only preparing we the people for common workplace employment. They don't want us to think as an intelligent, intellectual being with a philosophical outlook of God and the heavens. Apparently, according to my research, this is part of the communist plot 100 years ago, 90 years ago, when the Yiddish Jews and all the other people were in control of New York City prior to World War I, and many afterwards, were taking over the educational system intentionally, spearheaded in the United States, of course, by the Rockefellers, etc., and who also took over the pharmaceutical and medical industries and the oil and resource industries. There has been these dominant force people already manipulating our reality. Creating the Federal Reserve in 1913, crashing it 8 or 9 times since then, all the wealth and resources of many families across the nation lost everything. Lots of people committed suicide. So I'm just saying, these entities that I'm talking about, did they bring all this about? Just to take us, let us people climb to the top, work 30, 40 years, try to get somewhere, a little bit of wealth. Maybe your son could inherit it, your daughter. But they didn't want that. And they destroyed it all to bring everybody down. Think about it. Now they got sky spraying going on, HAARP systems, vaccines that kill, vaccine doctors that are seemingly dying, scientists dying, biologists dying, astronomers dying. Somebody's hiding something, in my opinion. All right, in the Allende's letter here, in my highlighted material, page Roman numeral 7, some of the terms in these stuff I'm going to read: mothership, home ship, dead ship, great ark, great bombardment, great return, great war, little men, force fields, deep freezes, measure markers, scout ships, magnetic, gravity fields, sheet of diamond, cosmic rays, force cutters, inlay work, clear talk, telepathing, burning coat, nodes, vortex, magnetic, net. They explained what happened to people and to ships and planes which had disappeared as discussed in Jessup's original work, and elaborated upon the origin of odd storms and clouds. Objects falling from the sky, strange marks and footprints and other matters Jessup wrote about. And I've got many of the books and I've been going over them, and I'm going to continue to go over them. Just skip around to different topics. The editor's introduction. Notations that imply intimate knowledge of UFOs, their means of motion, their origin, background, history, and habits of beings occupying UFOs provide an interesting subject for investigation. And again, only my highlighted portions as usual. You can go find the book. Just wanted to have a conversation. I read all of this material, as you will see, all the highlights. Hereafter they will be referred to as Mr. A, Mr. B, and Jemmy. So apparently these three beings who marked up Mr. Jessup's, Professor Jessup's book, one wrote in blue ink, one wrote in red ink, and one wrote in blue-green, blue-violet, and ink blue. So you could tell it was a different person with the writing. It is assumed that the third person was Jemmy, because of the direct use of Jemmy in salutations and references to that name by Mr. A and Mr. B throughout the book. It is probable that these men are gypsies. And who are gypsies? There's such an interesting thing there. Remember in Rabbi Marvin Antelman's book in my previous videos, Rabbi Marvin Antelman apparently obtained a copy of Hitler's diary. And in the streets of Munich, they had abducted a Munich gypsy and sacrificed him on an altar. Remember, these are Illuminati satanic cults, and Hitler was into that. To bring forth an interdimensional being, and on another altar lay a girl of that cult, and they wanted the being to impregnate the girl, to bring about some superior being. Hitler's diary. Rabbi Marvin Antelman, the leader of the Jewish Congress of the United States, who wrote the two books to eliminate the Opate, Volume 1, Volume 2, and Opate means the belief in God. And according to some videos, some people who were experiencing an alien abduction by some kind of gray alien types. When those persons screamed out, "Jesus, help me," the aliens dropped them like hot potatoes. You see how all this has some common denominators to it? What the heck is going on in the world? It is probable that these men are gypsies. In the closing pages of the book, Mr. B says, "Only a gypsy will tell another of the catastrophe, of that catastrophe. And we are a discredited people. Ages ago, yet man wonders where we come from." And again, I'm reminded of my material on the Zionist Jewish folks. Wandering the planet for thousands of years and being run out of everywhere they go to. What is different about them that causes this problem? And they claim it's not a religion or a race. Henry Ford had that discussion at large in the Jews in New York City at that time. Said that we're not a race of people or a religion of people, but they wouldn't say what they were. And of course, many good Jews are following the words of God and Moses in the Bible and the Ten Commandments, and they've been trying to warn the rest of us about these Zionist Jewish folks. So I'm just curious, what do the Illuminati, Freemasons, and all these other occultic groups, Bilderberger, Bohemian Grove, Council of Foreign Relations, Club of Rome, I said, Knights of Malta, Jesuits, all these organizations, as described in Constant Kumbi's book, Beware of the Rainbow. What is all this? Are they involved and in cahoots with these reptilian gray alien creatures? And are some of these aliens pro-human, trying to help us? As Arizona Wilder told David Icke in that video you can watch on YouTube, apparently when they have these satanic rituals, the Illuminati, they have a leader that looks just like a reptilian, like in the Star Trek TV show, called the Pindar. And the horrific things they do to humans when they sacrifice them, drink the blood, eat the flesh, is just beyond belief. So back to this book. The notes refer to two types of people living in space. Specifically, the stasis neutral and the undersea are mentioned as habitats. So do they have under the ocean habitats for alien beings on Earth right now? And the stasis neutral apparently would be something almost like a ghost or a spiritual being, a glowing orb, apparently hovering over crop circles as they're manifesting, which you can go on YouTube and watch. What is a glowing orb flying over the area, and underneath it is a crop circle manifesting? What kind of magic is that? Is it some kind of magic invoking something? A message or something? They seem to live in both interchangeably. The building of undersea cities is mentioned. Many different kinds of ships are used in transportation. These two peoples, races, or whatever they may be called, are referred to over and over again. They are called LMs and SMs. Terms such as mothership, home ship, dead ship, great ark, great bombardment, great return, great war, little men, force fields, deep freezes, undersea building, measure markers, scout ships, magnetic, gravity fields, sheets of diamonds, cosmic rays, force cutters, undersea explorers, inlay work, clear talk, telepathy, burning coat nodes, vortex, magnetic net, and many others are used quite naturally by these men. They explain how, why, and what happens to people, ships, and planes that have disappeared. They explain the original of odd storms and clouds, objects falling from the sky, strange marks and footprints, and other things that we have not solved. These men seem to feel that it is too late for man to obtain spaceflight. They feel that mankind could not cope with those mind-wrecking conditions that space and sea contain, that for mankind is egotistical and values too much the material and wars over mere parcels of the planet, and is filled with jealousy and lacks true brotherhood. Interesting word, using the word brotherhood. That's what they call all the people in the Illuminati, Freemasons, and other organizations, Rosicrucians, witchcraft, and all the other mystery school of Babylon, occultic. For short, I call it witchcraft groups. So what does witchcraft have to do with all this stuff? So now we're getting to the preface. Not even getting into the book yet. Highlighted thing here. The stories and material is based on observation and not by experiment. There are thousands of references to it in ancient literature. I have many of the books, including it's stuff like this is in the Bible. And the writers were recording such things as met their senses. So all these books I have, and all these people throughout the centuries who wrote about it, they could only write about it in terms of what they could see and they could think. They weren't thinking really outside the box like I do with this vast eclectic types of different material. You know, photographic pictures of ghosts, all kinds of stuff. People creating optics to see auras around people's bodies, and some psychics seeing auras naturally. Some psychics helping police find murderers and solve other crimes. People going to psychics all the time these days, trying to get readings. There's all kinds of weird things. So I also thought with this dome theory, gigantic plateau in space, my thinking is maybe when you die, your spirit goes back to the dome where you originated from, and it's a different kind of manifestation of a body that you have. And if you read some of the psychic research material from the Psychic Research Society of Europe and then the Psychic Research Society of America, and I have the big thick volumes of the books here, which we'll go over again, and they had seances talking to people after they had died. And apparently some people described their habitat, call it the dome theory, as beautiful and awesome. And some people described the habitat as, oh my God, I hate it. And usually the good people wound up in the better place and the bad people wound up in the more depressing place, according to reading the psychic research material. Documented in tons of journals. I'll show you one. I was collecting these for a while. I still should probably try to go find some more. That one is 1917. This is 1915. Not going to bother to look in these because I will go over them again in the future. Here's the one. I'll look at this one picture. I went over these in the past. You can go look at my past videos. But this is some of the camera pictures they took where they saw beings. See the ghost image in there? The guy was thinking of certain family members when they took the pictures. These were all experiments. Here was a writing in one. Notice the star and the moon, the Russian communist symbol on the top there. You don't think there's any connection. Keep on with your investigation, and you will be backed by a power that will bring success. Philip Brooks and Joseph Rawls. So that is what the interdimensional ghost being wrote. Keep on with your investigation. Look at the star and the moon. That's definitely occultic symbols. Just saying. That was 1916. Here's another one, 1915. And you can see I've read a lot of this. I've gone over it in previous videos. And you can go look these up and buy them online and read them. Or you can go get big, thick books, which are basically many of those pamphlets that came out every month combined in a big, thick book. The Facts of Psychic Research. Facts of Psychic Science. Just that I've been reading these over the years. You can see some of my highlighting there. Just saying, we're talking about aliens, UFOs. I think there's a connection. Here's got some of the chapter titles. The Study of Psychic Science, Psychical Research. Philosophy of Psychic Science. Mediums and Mediumship. Hypnotism. Dual and Multiple Personality. Telepathy. This is just on one page of the contents. Magic. Now remember, all these people who go to the Skull and Bones and join the Freemasons and study all this stuff, and all the other witchcraft groups, Kabbalah, whatever, they study this stuff. They learn how to use magic. The Kabbalah, the Talmud, the Zionist Jewish folks, into the occult. Think about that. Now we talk about these UFOs. Here's another book. Science and Psychical Phenomenon and Apparitions. Apparitions are beings that you see, that appear. Big thick book. These will be future things I do in future videos. Trying to get to the bottom of what the heck is going on. Here's one that's interesting. We'll have to go over and read. I've got some crazy reading to do. Mysticism. Evelyn Underhill. Look at the little picture on the cover of this book. Spooky? Is that a snake? With a woman with the dreadlocks and her breast and a snake's body. And there's a big face up here. Gene Roddenberry going into meditative state to write the Star Trek series with all those reptilian creatures. You don't think there's some of this stuff goes together? This lady has notes in this book and everything. I need to read all this stuff. You buy these books at Abe Used Books Online or other used books stores, you never know what you might find inside. And of course, the leader of the New Age, spearheading it, and Alice Bailey taking over afterwards and creating the Lucifer Publishing Company, which, because they thought it might be a little bit too obvious, changed the name to Lucas Publishing. And Lucas means light also. Lucifer means light. Anyways, I have to read this entire book, and I've gone over it and read some stuff. This is The Secret Doctrine by Alice Bailey. By Helena Blavatsky. So what I'm trying to say is when I go over this book, and we talk about this stuff, I think I need to keep that stuff in the back of my mind. How do apparitions, ghosts, possession, Bilderbergers or Bohemian Grove having the cremation of care rituals, throwing a baby in a fire, with a lot of our famous politicians photographed there, including Reagan and Kissinger and too many more. And so they're practicing all this occult stuff, communicating with interdimensional beings and some kind of ghosty-like stasis, and some solid. And even those people who went up onto the top of the cliff there and looked down there and saw these people doing a witchcraft ceremony, where appeared this reptilian tall creature who looked up and saw them, and then they went to run for their lives, and poof, he was right there in the midst of them. And I guess they were afraid he was going to destroy them. So what does all this have to do with spaceships that are being reported, as I just shown here, even today all over the cities of the United States and the world, some of them seemingly like ghosts, you can see through them, or they're glowing orbs, and some of them looking solid, as big as a mile wide. And apparently, according to my research, these ships could be hovering up in the upper atmosphere, and if the astronomers see them, and a lot of astronomers has been reported on YouTube by some researchers, many of them had mysteriously died. They were killed. Just a rash of them dying quickly, just like the vaccine researchers. So I have to keep all this other stuff in the back of my mind when I'm doing this research. That's why I do things, the Gospels out of the Bible. I do things with the Palladians. I do things with the Freemasons. Because the series is called Freemasonry and Satanism. And my goal is to find out what is this reality, what is going on, and what do they have planned for us. And if we pay attention to what they're doing and what they have done, the prognosis doesn't look too good for our future. So we might as well educate ourselves. Realizing with Rabbi Marvin Antelman writing the 2 volumes to eliminate the oppate, that they don't want people believing in God and praying to God. Apparently it's a communication that works. Maybe communicating with the other domes on this gigantic plateau we're all on, separated by vast ice fields, so on the surface you can't go to one of these other domes, and why it's illegal to go into the Arctic and try to get on top of that ice field and go anywhere. Only the government can do it. They've got bases down there represented by most of the top countries of the world, and the rest of us are forbidden to go there. Why? And the biodiversity programs they got going, I've shown the pictures before, they plan on fencing off more than 50% of the United States as biodiversity, no human may go there zones, with buffer zones around them, force the people into the cities, and apparently reduce the population significantly, maybe to only the amount of people they need for their to do the work on the planet, to sustain it so that these people can live in their opulence and thinking they are the aristocrats of the world. Crazy conversation? You think? But I've got the material. I'm using my brain. What is reality? Can we really? Is it all a hoax? Can we really get an aircraft into space? Is there a space to get into the way that we are thinking about it? Remember, they control the educational institutions. We think we believe what we do believe because that's what they taught us. And apparently they are wanting to direct us away from the truth. So when they're directing me this way, you know me, I want to look this way. When they put something on the news, San Bernardino school shooting, I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on if they're doing that on the West Coast, what's going on the East Coast? They were signing the Pacific Trade Agreement that day. Always. Right now with all this other craziness, stock market and all these other fears, and then they're mercilessly, however you say it, they're viciously killing the Arabs in Syria, trying to take down Assad. Killing and making all the other Arabs all over the Middle East flee for their lives and sending them to Europe to disrupt things and the United States to disrupt things. And the Middle East is the homeland with the Sphinx and the pyramids and many other things, King Solomon's temple, of these ancient rulers and pharaohs. Coincidence? I think not. Even Hitler was sending explorers all over the Middle East looking for artifacts. What were they looking for? The Ark of the Covenant? Some kind of power spear or something? Some kind of secrets. They're always looking for these secrets. So when I read these things, I have to just wonder, what is behind all this? Is this propaganda? And if people are really citing these, as per the reports you can go online and look at, and if maybe you know somebody who's seen something, where are they from? Are they just from this gigantic plateau that is 66 times the diameter of the Earth wide, which would be a huge plateau? And are there 54 other domes on it of varying sizes? It's a big thing like a big gigantic tooth with a big surface on the top. And anything not inside the dome would be all ice. The dome is what keeps us warm. Just theorizing. Could that be plausible? And so could there be 53 other domes with different kinds of societies in each dome? And when you die, you know, maybe your soul goes back to where your home is. And according to what Jesus says, in my Father's heaven there are many mansions and they're being prepared for you. So maybe people on earth, this prison planet, people who are good people, who care about other people, as Jesus said in the Gospel of St. Matthew, the number one commandment is to love God with all your heart. Number two is to love your fellow man like you love yourself. The two most important things. So I suppose, and of course if you believe in Jesus according to that, then you get saved because we're all natural instinct humans who make mistakes and sin. And what does that have to do with aliens and reptilians and greys and abductions and cloning and eugenics and all this stuff? And population reduction. And the government involved with the CIA and people like the Clintons, according to what I'm understanding, and other families into drugs and drug money. And mind controlling we people with the cartoons and spending billions of dollars on educating the people with the news and the cartoons and their magazines and everything else, daytime talk shows, to get the people to change their minds about sodomy and homosexuality and transgenderism. What does it all have to do with these creatures that some are evil and some are good? Are they behind the forces that rule our planet? Behind the occultic symbols of the United Nations? Behind the New Age religion? As per the Lucas Publishing, I saw a video on that yesterday, and some guy was in the Lucas Publishing library, and I guess nobody was in there paying attention to him, and he had somebody with him videoing it while he was pulling books off the shelf, and they had the books on there for everything: yoga, meditation, ascension, chakras, Rosicrucian, Mason, Freemason, all those things. So it's all connected. Just go to the Lucas Publishing Library and you can connect all the dots that matches my library in my house. My 7 or 8 bookcases full of stuff on all these topics that I've read for years. Back to the book. There are thousands of references in it to ancient literature. So these would be observable UFO or other strange things, gigantic blocks of ice falling from the sky, even metal, and other strange things. Whales popping up on a lawn in Kansas. Philadelphia experiment. Ship disappearing when you put a force field around it. What is our reality? So the writers were recording such things as met their senses. So when I go at all these books and I see people taking pictures with ghosts looking over the shoulder, I have to put everything into context. Hoping in those days that something would come of it. Nowadays, science is afraid that something will come of it. So apparently the scientists and the government today does not want we the people to be asking too many questions. Why did Kennedy get killed? Why Oklahoma City bombing seems to be seriously, deceptively a lie, the way they explain it, the government. 911, General Wesley Clark walking down the hallway in the Pentagon being told that they're planning on taking down 7 nations in the Middle East, including Syria and Iran. Why? What's going on? Who's behind this? So science is afraid something will come at it. It will too. In 1956 and 57, the Air Force will have ships like these in appearance. and will feel safe to announce that human eyes have seen saucers from outer space, but not to be worried, because we too have these ships. Oh brother, what a farce. Ours will be jet propelled. So apparently this is a little notation made by one of the entities marking up Jessup's book. You can see how they did it. So apparently some people say the United States has a space fleet already. I say, can we really go into space? And we know they have underground highways. Are there 54 domes, and can they go to these other domed areas, and are they keeping all that from us? And anything outside the 54 domes on this gigantic plateau? What is 66 times 10,000 miles? 660,000 miles across or something? 54 domes, and in the rock below, are there highways connecting the domes? Can people go into space? Or is it all propaganda? That's my point. Can the spaceships be real and all these entities be real, but they're manifested entities in other parts? This particular Earth dome has human-type entities. Look how strange some of the beings are in New Zealand or Australia from the other continents. Seems like, what did it say there in the Gospel of St. Matthew? With God, all things are possible. Moving on here, there is an overwhelming mass of authentic evidence, which can be cited as direct observation, indirect observation, and supporting evidence or indication. There is one sphere of indirect evidence in the forms of events of mysterious nature which have never been explained. These things would be easy to explain were we to admit the limitations of our own knowledge and the possibility of intelligence elsewhere in the universe operating spaceships. Quite possibly more than one kind of intelligence and more than one kind of spaceship. The world is full of unexplained oddities. The legends of Atlantis, Mu, have been favorite targets of the scoffers. They say there are no ghosts, no spirits, nothing falls from the sky, but iron and stone meteorites. But for centuries, the earth was believed to be flat. See what I'm saying? There was no America, no heliocentric system of earth and planets. Reliable people have been seeing the phenomenon known as flying saucers for 1,000 years or more. There are good reports as far back as 1500 BC and before. Thousands of people have seen some kind of navigable contraptions in the sky and have sworn it under oath. Here's one of the entities making a note here. If he does succeed in such evaluation, talking about the professor, nobody cares enough to bother believing him, for that would require the effort of courage. And the Gaiyar are such cowards. So I guess they call us Gaiyar, G-A-R-V-A-R, and conformist. Even if believed, nobody would dare say so, for that would require action. They dare not act in behalf of a belief that interferes with their usual living. So again, anybody who thinks outside the box, reads this stuff, makes videos, I think about 15% of the population who are probably awake. You try to go talking to some of your buds about this stuff and they'll think you're a lunatic. Because nobody wants to be different. They want to be a conformist. Just get along. You say gay is good? Okay, gay is good. I got some gay friends. Even though my parents would have believed it was the wrong thing to do. Because the government has been using propaganda in the news and cartoons and movies and TV shows, it's now okay. Who's making all this stuff okay? And their intentions can't be good if what we see from their actions already, the millions and millions of people who have been slaughtered and robbed of their money through the crashes of the economy intentionally by these maybe alien breed DNA folks, in cahoots with the bought and paid for politicians and other elitists who want to be thinking that they're the aristocrats, like H.G. Wells. He grew up with a poor family, but his mother was a servant of an elite family, and they kind of took him in, and he didn't like the common man. Funny how that works. In Yale and Harvard, those people have philosophical studies. Talk about things that we don't talk about. And in our school systems for the middle class and poorer people, you're only taught what is required for a workforce environment. They don't want you to be an intellectual, to know what's really going on. Maybe 54 other domes out there on this gigantic plateau, and the whole top of it's covered with ice, except for where they punch in these kind of atomic generators that create this gigantic shield, the size that would cover the Earth. Look at the United Nations symbol, and it certainly looks like Earth with a dome over it. Anyone reading this book would have to know that electron quantums within molecular structures are similar in scope to field as planets orbit. They would have to know that. Electrons and metal go across. What in planetary systems would be billions of miles, leaving 3 a gravitational field, dead node or vortex or neutral, as this one thing is variously called, realizing that this Dr. Albert Einstein did, it shows clearly how solids may become energy and dissolute, and how they may pass easily out of the visual scope instantly. So solids can be turned invisible. This is merely one clue gleaned from Einstein's theory of unified magnetic field through all substances and throughout. Whole intergalactic universe, U.S. experiments, 1943, on one part of it proved plenty. So a lot of people would have you believe, we all believe, that we're living in a holographic reality. Again, are we under some kind of dome? On a gigantic plateau with 53 other domes, and the whole thing is a big gigantic rock hovering, and we're just sitting in space, whatever space is, and it's inside the dome that there's a gravitational field, and the manifestation that allows this biological entity, me, to live, and animals and worms and trees and birds and everything else. Just challenging the brain to think. All right, moving on to the appendix. We haven't even started the book yet. His later computations upon cycles of human civilization in progress compared to the growth of man's general overall character was enough to horrify him. Dr. B. Russell asserts privately that it is complete. He says that man is not ready for it and shan't be till after World War III. So you see why reading the Allende letters and Dr. Jessup's book is apropos to this video? These entities who marked up the professor's books, the one he wrote, The Case for UFOs, says that we're not going to be ready for these kinds of technologies till after World War III. You do all the New Age material, and the phoenix rising is about the phoenix burning before it rises. That's how the story goes if you look up the phoenix. And so they have to destroy everything before they can rebuild everything. So what are they going to do? They're going to turn off the power to the dome and see everything die and then turn it on and rebuild? Because they don't need the people and they have the technologies? I don't know. Where does Jesus and God fit into this? The Theophist Society? demons, interdimensional masters they talk to, the Palladians? Where does all this fit? Good questions? Had Faraday concerned himself about the magnetic field theory and electric current, we today would not exist, or if we did exist, our present geopolitical situation would have the very time bombish ticking off towards destruction atmosphere that now exists. So they said we have an atmosphere in our political and social destruction that's getting ready to destroy itself. All right. The result was completely invisibility of a ship. Destroyer type. That was to be the Philadelphia experiment, the stuff I went over in previous videos. This whole marathon is focused on the Montauk project, where they were opening up time portals with electromagnetic fields, pushing children through, the young boys, through the time portals, knowing they couldn't retrieve them. And if they left it on long enough, some of the boys would wander back into the tunnel, and they could interrogate them to find out what was on the other side of the time portal. Then they were also mind controlling them with trauma mind control, with horrific things done to them, including sexual, that would, when you get totally freaked out, your brain shuts down. I mean, you can't handle it. And apparently they can fill that void with information and make people to be walking assassins, not knowing it, with trigger words. So they were seriously into this. So we have to wonder about these insidious creatures or people operating behind the scenes, if these books I've been going over are true in this series since number 73 to now 82, in the Montauk Project and all that other stuff. So what Einstein, with his theory of relativity, what happened to him that concerned him greatly is he saw that for the past couple thousand years, like this little chart shows here, this would be they say 2,000 years ago, and these are technical advancements, and this would have been 100 years ago when we got radio, and now we have iPads, all in 100 years, and here's thousands of years. So when Einstein did his mathematics on the progress of mankind and the way mankind treated mankind, he was horrified and said the theory of relativity can't be given to mankind, because he saw the growth rate in what man was doing to destroy man in the last 100 years and throughout history. He said, oh my, this is horrific. If you give these people these kinds of knowledge and tools, they will destroy each other and the planet right away. Just some thinking. The field, that's what he talks about, this field. The field was effective as an oblate spherical shape, extending 100 yards. So they did electromagnetic microwave transmitters around the ship, the Eldridge, the military ship. And it was oblate shaped and apparently extended out 100 yards around the ship. And it made it disappear and traveled, was seen a couple places around the world. And then it reappeared back in Philadelphia Harbor, and some of the crew members were half in and half out of the bulkhead. So if it's true, and there's so much more evidence I've gone over, you know, taking pictures of people with ghosts and psychic research and the Jacob's ladder, it's those two poles where they have the electric line goes up and down. People have seen those in movies or whatever. Jacob's ladder. It's a little electric current that arcs between the two poles and runs up and down. Apparently one scientist was leaning over one, and his pen fell out of his pocket into the Jacob's ladder, and poof, it reappeared across the room. And so, again, whales discovered in the fields in Kansas. My theory is there are a couple bolts of lightning hit where the whale was and created the vortex, and the whale was transported to Kansas. So this vortex technology appears to be real, and apparently it's that kind of power that operates the UFO craft. and interdimensional portals, as with CERN in Geneva. And apparently, it can open up portals, I don't know, to other domed areas with demonic beings in them. That maybe the forces that control the whole reality don't let them use the underground tunnel system to come and go. Just throwing some craziness into the conversation. So anyways, the people on the ship were walking on nothing when it was in its disappeared mode. The people, when the whole thing disappeared, the people could see each other on the ship, but they were walking on nothing, like they were in some kind of twilight zone. Any person without that spear could see nothing save clearly the defined shape in the ship's hull in the water. So if you were on an adjoining ship, and apparently there was Allende, the character who wrote these letters, was on an adjoining ship in the Navy, and he could see the outline of a ship in the water, but there was no ship. He could see the hull and everything, according to his letters that he wrote to Dr. Jessup. Except the defined shape of the ship's hull in the water, providing, of course, that that person was just close enough to see it yet, just barely outside the field. Half of the officers and the crew of the ship are at present mad as hatters. They went insane. A few are even yet confined to certain areas where they may receive trained scientific aid, where they either go blank or go blank and get stuck. So apparently these people, even after this experiment, could be standing in front of you and would similarly phase out of this reality and then phase back. Then I'm thinking also those guys that were camping that went up on the top of the hill there, the ledge, watched the witches with the ritual, and the reptilian creature appear who looked up and pointed up, and they tried to run and he just popped there. And then Rabbi Marvin Antelman's book, where Hitler, those group of people doing that ritual in Hitler's diary, abducted a gypsy man in Munich, Germany, and killed him to bring forth an interdimensional being, which apparently manifested, but failed to impregnate the girl lying on the adjoining altar to create some kind of supreme being. So what does witchcraft and all this stuff have to do with UFO and aliens? Obviously something. Gene Roddenberry going into meditative states to get the storylines of Star Trek, and a lot of reptilian creatures and stuff like that. Possession. How many people in the Star Trek series were possessed by other entities? Over and over. And reptilian creatures. Where was he getting the information? Where was Alice Bailey getting it? Where was Aleister Crowley getting it? Where was Helena Blavatsky? All these people in the Theosophist Society, the Kabbalah, Rosicrucians, all the mystery stuff studied in the Freemasonic books like Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. Who was communicating with the master and predicted 3 world wars? You see, the common denominator, the 3 world wars are mentioned in this book by these so-called alien beings marking up Professor Jessup's book. Edgar Cayce going into meditative states, trances, to get cures for people. Out of 18,000 readings, and the first half of his life was mostly healing. Then later on he got into life readings and telling people about other lives they had lived and where. What's going on? Even in Peru, when people take the haushka vine drug like opium or whatever it is, or peyote for the American Indians, the shamans would go into a meditative state and be with these interdimensional beings and get cures to cure people. I'm always fascinated about the Peruvian stuff. But this one shaman down there apparently was working with this one professor from a Northeastern university who brought him some paper and ink, paint, and stuff like that so he could draw what he saw in the meditative state. visions. Look at that. What is this interdimensional reality? Look at these creatures. You gotta admit, have quite a diversified field of research, investigating reality. So you take the ashwagandha drug, and you see things like this. What is the spirit world like? What is Hades like? Look at the snakes. What is this Earth, if we are on a planet, mostly water on the surface, spinning around at thousands of miles an hour, hurtling through space around the sun at 60,000 miles an hour, if you want to believe that, or whatever it is, some ungodly number. And then the other planets are doing the same thing, all going around the sun. And the sun is supposed to be in the belt of the galaxy, and all of that is turning at thousands of miles an hour, and the sun and the planets are going above and below the ecliptic plane. Quite the reality thought. So back to the conversation. In this book here, the marked up annotations by 3 apparent aliens or something about Dr. Jessup's book, A Case for UFOs, and then Allende, who was apparently a witness to the Philadelphia experiment. And apparently Einstein had completed the theory of relativity and erased the chalkboard and said that mankind wasn't ready for it because mankind was obviously indicating that it was taking a turn towards serious destruction the more technology it obtained. Which, by the way, as we all, if we've been watching my videos or you've been paying attention to any research, the world is gearing up for World War III. Even Brazil is buying aircraft carriers. Apparently France bought some from Russia, and Russia didn't want to deliver them. China is buying them. Super jets, laser beams on planes, drones, satellites in space, all kinds of technologies. Plague research, chemicals they're dispersing. Somebody's preparing for something pretty nasty, spending trillions of dollars. Going on today. So some of the people were mad as hatters, confined to separate areas, and they go blank or get stuck. So some of these people who were in that experiment weren't solidly connected to this reality. Going bland, i.e., an after effect of the man having been within the field too much. So again, can mankind exist outside this planetary sphere? However, it is when they get stuck that they call in Hell Incorporated. The man thusly stricken cannot move of his own violation unless 2 or more of those who are within the field go and touch him, else he quickly freezes. So some people will just get stuck in this interdimensional zone after being on that Philadelphia ship that had the microwave transmitters turned on that allowed it to travel in time and space. So apparently, back then in '43, they hadn't improved or successfully completed the scientific knowledge on how to use that technology, which is why they did Project Montauk with those boys in force field. Those were just continued experiments, which, by the way, after the Philadelphia experiment, Congress in the United States and the leaders were aware of this and ordered the Black Ops program people, CIA, and I suggest the other elitists and the Mystery School of Babylon, involving probably the Vatican and the Zionists and all these other people vying for the New World Order and New Age. They didn't listen to Congress, and they continued their experiments. FYI, according to my research. So if a man freezes, his position must be marked out carefully. Then the field is cut off. Everyone but that frozen man is able to move, to appreciate the apparent solidarity again. So apparently they were experimenting with this stuff again, creating these fields, and had some pretty dark turns on this technologies. It once took 6 months to get the man unfrozen. This deep freeze was not psychological. It is the result of a hyperfield that is set up within the field of the body, while the scorch field is turned on, and this at length or upon an old hand. So we all know we have auras around our body. If you see somebody speaking sometimes on stage, you can almost, if his energy is really hyped up, you can see his auric field. Or if you're a psychic, or if you get some Dionisine, which is coal dye, from coal, the coal you burn, and if you take some of the powder in water and let it set for a while, and then pour it between 2 sheets of glass about 1/4 of an inch thick, you can see, when you're looking through it at another person, you can see their aura. Dr. Kilner, in his book, I went over that, invented that. But the point that's interesting is, if you look up Dionisine on the internet and anywhere, you'll find out that it's illegal to possess. Why? Why? All right, a highly complicated piece of equipment had to be constructed in order to unfreeze those who became true froze and deep freeze subjects. Usually a deep freeze, the man goes stark raving, gibbering, running mad. In his freeze is far more than a day in our time. So you go crazy if you're in this field. And of course, on many of the books I went over, Beware of Familiar Spirits and all the other occultic books, even remote viewing, leaving your body, traveling around the planet, or interdimensionally, whatever. Apparently there's some creatures in that interdimensional field that are quite harmful. You got to know what you're doing before you go there. Crazy research I'm into. I speak of time, for deep frozen men are not aware of time as we know it. A man in an ordinary common freeze is aware of time, sometimes acutely so, but they are never aware of time precisely as you and I are aware of time. The first deep freeze, as I said, took 6 months to rectify. It also took over $5 million worth of electronic equipment and a special ship berth. So when they were playing around with this, they had some serious problems. If around or near the Philadelphia Navy, and if you are around or near the Philadelphia Navy, and you see a group of sailors in the act of putting their hands upon a fellow or upon thin air, observe the digits and the appendages of the stricken man. If they seem to waver as thou within the heat mirage, so if you see some people that look like a mirage, go quickly and put your hands upon him, for that man is the very most desperate of men in the world. Not one of those men ever want at all to become again invisible. So it just makes you wonder, when you do die, where does your spirit go? And if you go in the flesh into this interdimensional reality and you get stuck there, I mean, can you imagine how horrible it would be to be stuck there forever and not being able to do anything, your physical body? In a, almost like if you had something like Beam Me Up Scotty technology, and you know how the guy on the spaceship turns to little particles and goes up to where they were beamed up off the planet? Imagine getting stuck in that beam and not getting beamed up completely. Did they actually accomplish this? And what about all the other evidence that apparently these technologies are real in my books behind me? I got books called Oddities. It's people who spent their whole life scouring the newspapers for these weird things that happened about things disappearing and manifesting. History is full of this stuff. The Bible's full of this stuff. Ancient text is full of this stuff. Speaking of that, something else weird I noticed recently watching videos. Apparently, we have pyramids all over the world. Everybody knows that. But apparently, you're gonna love this, people have been lately seeing beams coming from the sky or from the top of the pyramid going up into the sky. There's a video on YouTube. I'm thinking, is this true? What's going on? Then we know we have the HARP systems, the transmitters all over the world. The government says they don't have and are peaceful. Can put microwave beams all over the world. Heat up the ionosphere. Sky spraying. All kinds of other crazy thing they're into. CERN. And that's been pretty spooky, some of the information about that. So there is something weird going on without a question. But yeah, apparently some of the pyramids have been photographed with a beam coming up out of the top of them. Or coming out of a cloud. Let's say a big cloud moves over to the pyramid and gets right over it. All of a sudden the beam appears. There's pictures on, look it up on YouTube, on the internet. Do your own research. I looked at it and I go, oh my God, I took several pictures. See if I have the pictures. See how good this shows. I took pictures with my camera. Can you see the pyramid? So anyways, what's the name of that video? If I can see it here, I'll tell you. What is causing mysterious rays of light radiating from pyramids around the world? That's the name of the video on YouTube. More mysteries. So anyways, back to this book, trying to finish something up here, make this video. There are only a few of the original experimental DE crew left by now. Most went insane. One just walked through his quarters wall in sight of his wife and child. 2 other crew members was never seen again. 2 went into the flame, i.e. they froze and caught fire, while carrying common small boat compasses. 1 man carried the compass and caught fire. The other came for the laying on of the hands. He was nearest, but he too took fire. So some of these people just burst into flames. They burned for 18 days, and faith laying hands died. When this happened, and men's mind went by the scores. Okay, so apparently some of these people, when they went invisible on the ship, somehow managed to get ashore. They raided a local, to the Navy Yard gin mill, so they went to a local bar, beer joint, and caused such shock and paralysis of the waitresses that little comprehensible could be gotten from them, save that paragraph in the writer of it does not believe it and says, I only wrote what I heard, and them dames is daffy. So these waitresses really went berserk in trying to explain what happened when these ghost-type beings invaded the bar. I ask you to do this bit of research simply that you may choke on your own tongue when you remember what you have appealed to be made law. So then what we went over there was one of Allende's letters to Dr. Jessup, because Allende was a witness to this stuff. And he says in this letter, very disrespectfully yours, Carl M. Allen. So then there was a second letter. Well, let's see what this is. This is days later. Reading my highlighted portions only and having a bit of a conversation here so that I can ponder. This is an education for me too as I continue to do this research. What is reality? You know, you talk about God, going to heaven, going to Hades. You talk about the United Nations and trying to destroy Christianity, actually making it illegal. Get it court-martialed if you talk about Jesus in the army. Why? What in the heck is going on in the world? And then 36% approval rating of gay marriage 20 years ago, and now 68% at the cost of billions of dollars and some serious thinking and conniving and propaganda from these people who control our world. Who are into the mystery schools of Babylon, coming from the Freemasons, Illuminati, Rosicrucians, witchcraft and all that, where Larry Nichols, who was the Clintons' henchman, the enforcer, I guess when Bill Clinton was went to be governor and then on to be president, you have these special people who get things done, shut people up, even kill. But he says one of the things they were worried about was Hillary taking a plane to Vegas to go and get involved in some witchcraft activities. Larry Nichols with Alex Jones on Infowars.com videos. You can look up Larry Nichols. Or Lisa Haven and Larry Nichols, and he tells all this stuff. So again, I'm not saying what's true and not true. But when I find out the Republican Party leaders and all that are going to the Bohemian Grove, having a witchcraft ceremony, these people were photographed there, and throwing a baby into a fire under a giant owl, and cremation of care, screeching and howling, naked under long robes and shipping in gay men for sex. So they're all into Satanism and Luciferianism. And then I find out that the Clintons are into this stuff. And Arizona Wilder with David Icke, his video, you can look it up. She describes the Illuminati with high, powerful people from all over the world, including the Queen of England and many others. And this being called Pindar, a giant reptilian creature, like the one that was in that witchcraft ceremony that those people on the top of the mountain saw, called Pindar. And they viciously sacrifice a young person or something and drink the blood. It's a horrific event. They get very vicious. And they apparently shapeshift into these reptilian creatures, and they can manifest themselves to look like humans. Apparently they are among us, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube and all that. So when I'm studying this stuff and all this other stuff, people taking images of ghosts when they take a picture of a person, psychic readings, seances, communicating with the dead, Edgar Cayce, psychic research, UFO, aliens, and then the New Age and the New World Order and killing of Kennedy, and that whole story I've been researching lately is full of mystery. Even the Oklahoma City building bombing seems planned so they could get legislation passed to have more police powers over us. 911, the same reason. They already had the Patriot Act written. They couldn't have passed it if they didn't have 911. The buildings were pulled. Building 7 never hit by a plane. Sandy Hook, the guy in the background, is doing the devil sign. The TV newscaster guy shows up with a picture of an owl, like the Bohemian Grove where they throw a baby into. Or on the US dollar bill, on the 1 on the right-hand side of the number 1 on the front of the dollar bill, get your magnifying glass, there's a little owl. Washington, D.C., the street plan is designed like an owl. That's called Moloch, a demonic god. The Collider CERN in Geneva, as they keep saying, a statue of the destruction goddess Shiva out front. From the Indian and the Buddhist area. That's where Helena Blavatsky went, who studied that stuff for years and brought the Theosophist Society material, the New Age, to the world. And apparently, it's the religion of the United Nations. Even the Lucas Trust Society's facilities is located right next to the United Nations. Apparently, that's their religion. These reptilian creatures, demonic beings, is going to be the religion of the world in the near future. So what does that have to do with this book? Ship turning invisible, people half in and out of the bulkhead, and much more in this book. When an apparently visible man and new man just walks by seemingly through the wall, and many of these alien abduction cases talk about the aliens walking right through the wall. In many books I have in my library. The surrounding area searched by all men and thoroughly scrutinized by and with and under, installed portable field developer, and nothing ever found of him. So some guy just walked through a wall and disappeared, and they got all kinds of equipment and they couldn't find him. So many fears were by then in effect that the sum total of them all could not ever again be faced by any of these men and by the men working at and upon the experiments. So this technology is what they were really seriously also into at the Montauk Project, where they were abducting young boys from Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, and everywhere. And apparently they found a whole pile of bones of these kids. I wish to mention that somehow, also, the experimental ship disappeared from its Philadelphia dock, and only a very few minutes later appeared at its other dock in Norfolk, Newport, New Portsmouth area. And this was distinctly and clearly identified as being that place, but the ship then, again, disappeared and went back to its Philadelphia dock. May have been in 1956 after the experiments were discontinued. I cannot say for sure. So apparently when the ship reappeared at a dock, some of their news reporter put it in the newspaper that it appeared there, that it was there. So there's evidence in newspapers that it showed up, and then it disappeared and went back to its own dock. Is this stuff true? 500 books or more in my library. Are they all lies? To the Navy, this whole thing was so impractical due to its morale-blasting effects, which were so efficient operation of the ship that drastically hindered, and then after this occurrence, so this Allende guy doesn't do really good English, it was shown that even the mere operation of the ship could not be counted on at all. In short, ignorance of this thing bred such terror of it that on the level of attempted operations, with that knowledge that then available, it was deemed as impossible, impractical, and too horrible. So this is Allende writing to Dr. Jessup. I believe that had you been working upon, and with the team that was working upon this project, with yourself knowing what you now know, that the flames would not have been so unexpected, or such a terrifying mystery. They may have been prevented by a far more cautious program and cautiously careful selection of personnel, ship's officers, and crews. Remember, this was 1943, and apparently these people were trying to develop weapons to battle with Hitler with, so they weren't really trying to be careful. The Navy used whatever human material was on hand, without much, if any, thought as to character and personality of that material. If great care is taken in the selection of ship, officers, and crew, and if careful indoctrination is taken along with careful watch over the articles of apparel, such as rings, watches, and identification bracelets, and belt buckles, plus any, and especially, the effect of the hobnailed shoes and cleated shoes, U.S. Navy issue shoes. So if you have any metal on you when you get into this magnetic field, apparently it can create a disastrous situation. I feel that some progress towards dissipating the fear-filled ignorance surrounding this project will be most surely and certainly accomplished. So he feels they're going to continue working on these technologies. The records of the U.S. Maritime Service House, Norfolk, Virginia, for graduated seamen of their schools will reveal who was assigned to the SS Andrew Forsyth for a month of either late September or October 1943. So he was providing information to prove that he was there. I remember positively one other observer who stood beside me. Very sincerely, Carl M. Allen. That's his name, and that's his letter. And if you want to pause it so you can read it, go right ahead. All right, so there was two letters. And this one here doesn't seem to have a lot of highlighting. The second letter received by Mr. Jessup from Carlos Allende. Kensington, Pennsylvania, Carl M. Allen. Dear Mr. Jessup, I'm going to just jump to my highlighted sections. As you know, one who has is hypnotized, cannot lie. And one who is both hypnotized and given truth serum, as is colloquially known, could not possibly lie at all. So Mr. Allen here is volunteering to be hypnotized and given a truth serum to prove what he's saying is true. The mind does not ever forget. There's an interesting thing to know too. Everything, your whole life experiences are in your head. I used to play around with that after I learned how to hypnotize people when I was much younger. And I would turn on a tape recorder and regress people. And I would ask them what their name was, like when they were 7 or 8 years old. And if the girl was Debbie, she might go, Dee Dee. And then when I would bring the person back to today, and I played the recorder, the girl said, oh my God, I forgot. When I was a little kid, instead of Debbie, they called me Dee Dee. And they had their little voice sounded like a child too on the tape recorder. So regression hypnotism is quite interesting. And I've got the book Dianetics from Ron E. Hubbard. And it's where I learned how to do that many years ago. There's a funny story that goes along with that. But suffice it to say, as I seem to have lost my ability to hypnotize people after I did some experiments on myself. Stuff you shouldn't play with. They did not fail to, I hope you realize, achieve metallic or organic invisibility, nor did they fail to unbesottingly achieve transportation of thousands of tons of material and humans at an eye's blink speed. They did not fail to. I believe that further experiments would naturally have produced controlled transport of great tonnages at ultra-fast speeds to the desired point the instant it is desired through. The usage of an area covered by those cargoes and that field, remember this is Allen's writing, not mine, that could cause these goods, ships, and ships' parts. Men were transported as well to go to another point, accidentally and to embarrassed perplexity. To the Navy, this had already happened to a whole ship and crew and all. I read of this and of the off-base AWOL activities of the crewmen who were at that time invisible in the Philadelphia newspaper under hypnotist. I can be enabled to divulge the name, dates, and section and page number of that paper and the other one. So he says he wants to get hypnotized so he can give the exact evidence of the time, dates, so that they can, this investigator who wrote the Case for UFO books, the professor, could investigate this and get the news out to the public. The name of the reporter who skeptically covered and wrote of these incidences of the restaurant barroom raid while invisible and the ship's sudden AOL who interviewed the waitresses can thus be found. So he wants Mr. Jessup to go investigate this and find the waitresses and people to verify that what he's saying is true, that this really happened. So I'm just saying, you know, I do this research, trying to find out what's real, what's not. How does it all fit in with all the other insanity going on in the world? So my more highlighted portions here. Personality to be dealt with that had cost plenty. The ability to convince people of an outright lie as being the absolute truth would be one of his primary prerequisites. Yes, then some skullduggery would have thought well out and done. The ultimate end will be a truth too huge, too fantastic to not be told. A well-founded truth backed up by unobfuscatable proof positive. I would like to find out where it is these sailors live now. It is known that some few people can somehow tell you a man's name and his home address, even under hypnosis, even though never having ever met or seen that person. Edgar Cayce used to do readings from people who would just send him a letter. They were looking for cures for their different ailments. They didn't show up in person. So when he was under a trance and his handler was sitting there, his secretary, and she would ask questions and he would answer it, and then they would mail it back to that party without even being present. Edgar Cayce didn't even know the person. He just got the letter in the mail. This is all at the Edgar Cayce Institute in Virginia Beach. That you can go there. And many books you can buy at the bookstore, Edgar Cayce. Supposed to be the greatest psychic ever known. What about all the other prophets throughout history? All the things that Jesus said was happening in the future. How about King David, I think it was. The prophet told him that a king was coming that was going to take his throne. And so when Jesus was born, he had ordered that all newborn, firstborn children under 2 or 3 years old to be killed. So apparently Jesus' mother and father took him to Egypt. Lots of crazy stuff, lots of coincidences. Either through that barroom restaurant raid was staged by invisible or partly invisible men. These men can see each other, thus names. How would you like to actually speak to, or some of the men, a man who was once an invisible human being, may become so in front of your very eyes if he turns off his hip set? So do these people have to have some kind of an electronic thing on them to keep them in this reality? What happened to them? Is it true? I want to crack this thing wide open. My reasons are simple: to enable more work to be done upon this field theory. I am a stargazer, Mr. Jessup. I make no bones about this. And the fact that I feel that if handled properly, i.e. presented to people and science in the proper psychological effective manner, I feel sure that man will go where he now dreams of being. To the stars via the form of transport that the Navy accidentally stumbled upon. To their embarrassment, when their experimental ship took off and popped up a minute or so later on several hundred sea travel trip miles away at another of its berths in the Chesapeake Bay area. I read of this in another newspaper, and only by hypnosis could any man remember all the details of which paper, date, and occurrence, etc. you see. Perhaps already the Navy has used this accident to transport to build UFOs. It is logical advance from any standpoint. What do you think? Very respectfully yours, Carl Allen. I'll leave it here for a second. so that if you do go back up and pause it, you can read it. So there was 2 parts to this document, this big book here. Not very thick. How many pages? 204. And that was the marked up edition of Jessup's book, A Case for UFOs, right here. And the 2 letters. We went over the 2 letters and the introduction and all that, and a lot of my other sidebar commentary. And so what I'll do is I'll save part 1 for the next video. In the comment section below, you can leave a comment. Say this stuff is crazy, I'll agree with you. But then again, they appear to have some other bizarre things going on in the world. Why, in the Middle East, are they overthrowing other countries? And they are determined to take Assad down. And Iran eventually next. And all the other countries, and a lot of the Arabs are being run out of there, sent to Europe, sent to the United States. And it is the ancient homeland for these mysterious beings back when Egypt was there, with the Pharaoh, and in Jerusalem with King Solomon's temple and the magic ring that could call forth demons. And this is the age of Aquarius, and we are reaching some biblical prophesized end-time events. How does it all tie in with each other? I believe it does. This book's written on the UFO coincidences and information of the Bible. I have the books. We'll go over them. So thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.